Hey y'all, Levance here. Hey, I just wanted to run a real quick idea by you, and something that I've been kind of mulling over in my mind and thought that I should share it with you. But anything, by the way, anything that I share with you is something I've either gone through myself or someone that I know who's personally gone through and has overcome. So I'm actually speaking from experience, and I think that this next idea that I share with you, I think it'd be very helpful. And again, I'm going to be giving personal examples from my life. I think that's very useful because sometimes we listen to different messages and it's like, are you living up to what you're talking about? Are you practicing what you preach and that kind of thing? And anyway, so I'm going to be sharing you things that I'm actually currently doing or I've overcome in my life. But one of the things that I think that people are when they cross certain bridges or they come up against a challenge in their life or something that they've experienced in the past or something that they're going through at this moment, they allow an unseen enemy to deceive them by paintbrushing their future with something that is going on in their present or something that's happened in their past. And what I mean by that is that people think that what's happening today, if it's a challenge that's happening today, that it's going to always be that way, or something that they've experienced in the past, it continues to show up in their future, and it's going to always be that way. And I want to encourage you to don't let the enemy within or the enemy without paintbrush your future with the same color because of experiences that you're having today or experiences that you've had in the past. Let me give you a perfect example from my own life. As many of you know, I've been married for 7 years. I think I mentioned that in the other video. And in the first couple of years of my marriage was probably some of the hardest years in my marriage. But let me give you an example, a real life example. And so there were certain things my wife would do or she wouldn't do or things like that. Anyway, it was a challenge. And I would look at her and I wouldn't say these things to her, but I would be thinking to myself, man, if she doesn't shape up, if she doesn't change, if she doesn't, transform or whatever the case may be, then you know what? Then hey, the inevitable is going to happen. I'm gonna probably have to get out of here, or we probably need to break up. But what I was doing at that moment was I was looking at our present circumstances, and I was saying that it was going to always be that way. That my life, things wouldn't change, and she wouldn't change, and I had a little bit of ego and pride in me, and I didn't want to change either, and all those things that comes with that. But I want to let you know that that happens to all of us. Is nobody in this life, whether it's in a relationship or whether it's with a business colleague or a business partner or anything, where you're not going to come across a bridge or you come across a challenging situation. But I know in that situation, when I was going through, I'm looking at my notes here, just making sure I'm getting, the points across that I want to get across. I know it's difficult. You almost feel like you feel hopeless. You feel like, man, if this person doesn't change, or if this group of people don't change, then I'm not going to be able to get what I want, or I'm not going to be able to be able to enjoy my life, and I might as well instead of waiting years to get to the inevitable that's breaking off the relationship, I might as well do it now to save future pain. And I'm gonna let you just marinate on that thought, because what I'm saying is true. And so it was like, let me just give up now. Let me go back home to my home country and just kind of throw in the towel and kind of start all over, which is another kind of crooked thought in itself. But one of the points I want to bring up, and which I think is very valuable in this sense, is that one of my favorite movies is The Matrix. It's been my favorite movie for a very long time, or at least one of them. And I don't know if you remember the battle between, it was like an epic battle between Mr. Smith and Neo. And this was a scene where it was raining. They were like in the city, and it was dark outside. It was raining really bad, and Neo and Mr. Smith was out fighting, and Mr. Smith ended up turning like the entire city, like millions of people, into like Mr. Smith, right? And so at the climax of the battle, Mr. Smith beats Neo down. He drops him to the ground. He puts like a big old imprint in the concrete, and Neo's glasses are cracked. He's beat up pretty bad. And Mr. Smith looks at him and he says, "Neo, why don't you just give up? It's inevitable." And Neo looks at him, with his back on the ground. He looks up at Mr. Smith and he says, I choose not to. He says, I choose not to. And I think that that's imperative in any challenge you're going through in life, that no matter how bad it's beating on you, you ultimately have a choice to not give up. And, fast forward, 5 or 6 years later, my wife and I think we're in the best, some of the best places in our marriage that we've ever been in. And, but I want to let you know what changed. For a while, I always had it in my heart that, my wife needed to change. My wife needed to change. And that probably was true to some degree. But really, I stopped focusing on trying to change her. And I started looking within and and I started looking within and realized that I needed to change. So my perspective changed. And I always tell people, there's 3 perspectives. Maybe you'll agree with me here. There's your perspective to a situation, right? There's the other party's perspective to the situation. And then there's God's perspective to the situation. And what I realized was that, whether my wife needed to change or whether she didn't need to change, whatever the case may be, what she was right in what she was doing, I was right in what I was doing. But in order for me to progress in our relationship, I needed to change. And when I changed, the situation changed. And it's so crazy because it's like, if you've ever gotten glasses before, right? And you're sitting at the optometrist's chair and, they put the little things over your eyes and he's like, hey, can you see the board now? What letters do you see? You're like, they're blurry. And he puts another, lens over your eyes. He's like, what level, can you see them now? You're like, a little bit. And then finally, he gets down to, to where you can actually see very clear with both eyes. And that's almost like perspective. And what happened is that my perspective began to change. The situation didn't change, but my perspective changed. And the crazy thing is that my wife, she became more interesting to me. She became more enticing to me. She became more desirable to me. And the funny thing is again, she didn't necessarily change. I was the one who changed. And you're probably asking yourself, well, Levance, what if she never changed? What if you do all the change and or what if, you do all the change and that person never changed or this situation never changed? I don't know. But one thing I can tell you is that if you don't change, more than likely the situation won't change itself. That's one thing I can tell you. But you can't go into the situation thinking like this, that I'm only going to change for a little bit, and if nothing else changes, then I'm going to back out. You have to make a personal commitment to yourself that you are going to be the difference maker, that you are going to be the change agent. And once you change, regardless of whether that person changed or the situation changed, it doesn't matter because you've made the personal commitment. Once you make the personal commitment, I almost want to guarantee you that the situation will change because of the way you see it, the way you perceive it, the way you look at it. And it's funny how this thing works. But anyway, I hope you can get that point, that in order for things to change around you, you got to change. You got to man up. You got to woman up. You got to become an adult in a situation, and you got to change. That's the first thing, or the first transformation that should happen is within yourself. And so make sure I'm hitting these points here. You have to make the commitment. You can't go in half-hearted and expect to get the results that you want. You got to go all the way in. Once you go all the way in and there is no way for you to return, it will change. It will change. The problem with most of us is like we try to dip our toe in, or we go halfway in, and then we want the results to change, or we want change. But I'm gonna leave with this. And I'm gonna leave on this note because I think I've been I'm spending a lot of time here and I got to get going. But this law will always remain in this universe as long as the universe is the way it is today. The law is whatever you sow, you'll reap. But the beauty of it is that you reap much more than what you sow. It's like sowing a kernel of corn. You don't get back a kernel of corn when it grows out the ground. You actually get a stalk of corn with a lot of heads on it. So whatever you sow, you're going to reap. And I promise you, if you sow the good stuff, whether it's in a relationship, between an individual and yourself, or a business transaction, or in your family, whatever it is, I guarantee you at some point, if you commit long enough, you're going to get back much more than what you sowed. And that situation is going to have to change because you're following a principle, you're following a law of the universe. Anyway, I don't know if this was helpful for you, but I got excited about it. Pretty helpful for me. So I'm hoping that you got some benefit out of it. And I'm out. God bless you all, and take it easy. Bye now.